Okay, now we go to chapter 4, Megya Vaga. 4.1, Megya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying at Chalika on Chalika hill. At that time the Venerable Megya was the Lord's attendant. Then the Venerable Megya approached the Lord, prostrated himself, stood to one side and said, I wish to go into Jantu village for alms food, revered sir. And the Buddha said, Do now, Megya, what you think it is time to do. Then the Venerable Megya, having put on his robe in the forenoon and taken his bowl and outer cloak, entered Jantu village for alms food. Having walked in Jantu village for alms food, after the meal, on returning from collecting alms food, he approached the bank of the river Kimikala. As he was walking and wandering up and down beside the river for exercise, he saw a pleasant and charming mango grove. On seeing it, he thought, This mango grove is very pleasant and charming. It is eminently suitable for the endeavor of a young man of good family who is intent on the endeavor. If the Lord were to give me permission, I would come and endeavor or strive in this mango grove. Then the Venerable Megya approached the Lord, prostrated himself, sat down to one side and said, Revered sir, having put on my robe in the forenoon, etc., I approached the bank of the river Kimikala and saw a pleasant and charming mango grove. On seeing it, I thought, This mango grove is very pleasant and charming. It is eminently suitable for the endeavor of a young man of good family who is intent on the endeavor. If the Lord were to give me permission, I would come and strive in this mango grove. If, revered sir, the Lord gives me permission, I would go to that mango grove to strive. When this was said, the Lord replied to the Venerable Megya, As we are alone, Megya, wait a while until some other monk comes. In other words, the Buddha wants him to accompany the Buddha, attend to the Buddha. A second time, the Venerable Megya said to the Lord, Revered sir, the Lord has nothing further that should be done, and nothing to add to what has been done. But for me, revered sir, there is something further that should be done, and something to add to what has been done. If, revered sir, the Lord gives me permission, I would go to that mango grove to strive. A second time, the Lord replied to the Venerable Megya, As we are alone, Megya, wait a while until some other monk comes. A third time, the Venerable Megya said to the Lord, Revered sir, the Lord has nothing further that should be done, etc., etc. I would go to that mango grove to strive. And the Buddha said, As we are talking of striving, Megya, what can I say? Do now, Megya, what you think it is time to do. Then the Venerable Megya rose from his seat, prostrated himself before the Lord, and keeping his right side towards him, went to the mango grove. On entering the mango grove, he sat down at the foot of a certain tree for the rest period during the middle of the day. Now while the Venerable Megya was staying in that mango grove, there kept occurring to him 3 bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts, sensual thoughts, malevolent thoughts, and cruel thoughts. The Venerable Megya then reflected, It is indeed strange, it is indeed remarkable. Although I have gone forth out of faith from home to the homeless state, yet I am overwhelmed by these 3 bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts, sensual thoughts, malevolent thoughts, and cruel thoughts. Then the Venerable Megya, on emerging from seclusion in the late afternoon, approached the Lord, prostrated himself, sat down to one side and said, Revered sir, while I was staying in that mango grove, there kept occurring to me 3 bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts, and I thought, It is indeed strange. I am overwhelmed by these 3 bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts, sensual thoughts, malevolent thoughts, and cruel thoughts. And the Buddha said, When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Megya, 5 things lead to its maturity. What 5? Here, Megya, a monk has good friends, or a good friend, good associates, good companions. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Megya, this is the first thing that leads to its maturity. Stop here for a moment. This good friend is Kalyana Mitta. I think in Chinese they translate it as San Zhi Si. good knowing advisor. In other words, a good spiritual friend, a good spiritual teacher. Furthermore, Megya, a monk is virtuous. He lives restrained by the restraint of the Patimokkha, the precepts of a monk. Endowed with conduct and resort, seeing danger in the smallest faults, he trains in the training rules he has accepted. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Megya, this is the second thing that leads to its maturity. Furthermore, Megya, a monk obtains at will, with no trouble or difficulty, talk that is effacing, a help in opening up the mind, and which conduces to complete turning away dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment and nibbana. That is, talk about fewness of wishes, talk about contentment, talk about seclusion, talk about non-gregariousness, talk about putting forth energy, talk about virtue, talk about concentration, talk about wisdom, talk about liberation, talk about knowledge and vision of liberation. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Megya, this is the third thing that leads to its maturity. Furthermore, Megya, a monk lives with energy instigated for the abandoning of unwholesome states and the acquiring of wholesome states. He is vigorous, energetic, and persevering with regard to wholesome states. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Megya, this is the fourth thing that leads to its maturity. Furthermore, Megya, a monk is wise, endowed with the noble one's penetrative understanding of rise and disappearance or cessation, leading to the complete ending of suffering. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Megya, this is the fifth thing that leads to its maturity. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Megya, these five things lead to its maturity. It is to be expected of a monk who has good friends or a good friend, a good associate, a good companion, that he will be virtuous, that he will live restrained by the restraint of the Patimokkha rules, endowed with conduct and resort, and seeing danger in the smallest faults. He will train the training rules he has accepted. It is to be expected of a monk who has a good friend that he will obtain at will, with no trouble or difficulty, talk that is effacing, a help in opening up the mind, etc., talk about knowledge and vision of liberation. It is to be expected of a monk who has a good friend that he will live with energy instigated, vigorous, energetic, and persevering with regard to wholesome states. It is to be expected of a monk who has a good friend that he will be wise, endowed with the noble one's penetrative understanding of rise and cessation, leading to the complete ending of suffering. A monk, Megya, who is established in these five things, should also cultivate four additional things. Foulness or unattractiveness should be cultivated for overcoming lust. Loving kindness should be cultivated for overcoming malevolence or ill will. Anapanasati, mindfulness of the breath, should be cultivated for cutting off thinking. The perception of impermanence, anicca, should be cultivated for the removal of the conceit, I am. For when one perceives impermanence, Megya, the perception of no self or non-self is established. When one perceives not self, one reaches the removal of the conceit, I am, which is called nibbana here and now. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Trivial thoughts, subtle thoughts, mental jerkings that follow one along. Not understanding these mental thoughts, one runs back and forth with wandering mind. But having known these mental thoughts, the ardent and mindful one restrains them. An awakened one has entirely abandoned them. These mental jerkings that follow one along. That's the end of the sutta. This sutta is quite good because a lot of monks, they are impatient to practice. The Buddha asked him to wait to serve the Buddha until another monk comes along, but he was impatient. He thought, there's such a nice piece of mango grove there. He thought if he goes there, it's so conducive, his mind will become concentrated immediately. But when he went there, he found, surprisingly, that all these thoughts was disturbing him. So the Buddha told him, 5 things are very important for a monk. One is a good spiritual friend or a spiritual teacher. The second one is to have a very good sila, keep the precepts very well. The third is to have Dhamma talk from somebody who is wise about the Dhamma. A lot of people think all this talk and all this studying is not important, but it is one of the conditions for liberation. Then the fourth is energetic effort. Then the fifth, the monk has to be wise, always to be able to see rise and fall, birth and cessation of everything in the world. Everything arises and ceases. 4.2 Udatta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Kusinara at Uppavattana in the sultry grove of the Malas. On that occasion a number of monks were living in forest huts not far from the Lord, and they were turbulent, arrogant, frivolous, garrulous, of loose talk, unmindful, uncomprehending, unconcentrated, with wandering minds and uncontrolled faculties. The Lord saw those monks living nearby in forest huts, with wandering minds and uncontrolled faculties. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: with an unguarded body and encumbered by wrong view, overcome by lethargy and torpor, one goes along in the power of Mara. So one should be guarded in mind. One should make right thought one's domain. When he has put right view to the forefront and understood rise and fall, a monk who overcomes lethargy and torpor will forsake all bad destinations. So you see, some monks, they are not ready to live alone in the forest. This is another type of impatient monks. They go to the forest and construct these huts and live there, but their minds are wandering all over the place, and they are arrogant. They think they are forest monk, and so they are not making any progress. Actually, there's one sutta in the Satipatthana Samyutta of the Samyutta Nikaya. There was a monk who wanted to go and live alone, so he came to the Buddha for some advice. He told the Buddha he intended to go to the forest and live alone. That means he must have completed at least 5 years of training under a teacher. Then the monk told him, the monk wanted to teach him about Satipatthana, but the monk told him that there are 2 foundations you must start with. Every person on the spiritual path needs these 2 basic foundations before you start meditating. The Buddha said the first one is moral conduct, sila. Your sila must be very pure. Secondly, right view. A lot of monks, without gaining right view, they go off and meditate. Right view comes from studying the suttas. The Buddha said very clearly, only 2 conditions for right view we find in the Majjhima Nikaya. Only 2 conditions for right view. One is the voice of another teaching you the Dhamma. You cannot get the Dhamma without you cannot get right view without somebody teaching you the Dhamma. The second one is Yoniso Manasikara, careful attention, thorough attention. Only these 2 conditions, and it has nothing to do with meditation. You look carefully, these 2 conditions has nothing to do with meditation. It is basically listening to the Dhamma with proper attention. And that's why the Buddha's disciples are all called savakas, senwen, hearers, listeners. Only when you listen to the Buddha's words and you get right view, you are considered a Buddha's disciple. Otherwise, one day you say you are Buddhist, another day you change your religion, as has happened to many of our so-called Buddhists. So that's why here the Buddha says, encumbered by wrong view. They don't have right view, how can they go to the forest and try to meditate? 4.3 Gopala Sutta. Gopala is a cowherd. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was journeying among the people of Kosala together with a large sangha of monks. Then the Lord stepped off the road and going up to the foot of a tree, he sat down on a seat prepared for him. A certain cowherd approached the Lord, prostrated himself and sat down to one side. The Lord then instructed, roused, inspired and gladdened that cowherd with a talk on Dhamma. And that cowherd, being instructed, roused, inspired and gladdened by the Lord's talk on Dhamma, said to the Lord, "Please consent, revered Sir, to my providing a meal tomorrow for the Lord together with the Sangha of monks." The Lord consented by remaining silent. Then on seeing that the Lord had consented, the cowherd arose from his seat, prostrated himself before the Lord, and keeping his right side toward him, went away. When the night had ended, the cowherd prepared in his own dwelling a large quantity of thick rice gruel boiled in milk and a quantity of fresh ghee, and announced to the Lord the time for the meal, saying, "It is time, revered Sir, the meal is ready." You see, last time people eat very simply, rice with milk, that's all. Nowadays we have so much variety of food, we get stomach upset from eating too many different types of food. Then the Lord, putting on his robe in the forenoon and taking his bowl and outer robe, together with the Sangha of monks, went to the dwelling of that cowherd. On arriving, he sat down on the seat prepared for him. Then the cowherd, with his own hand, served and satisfied the Sangha of monks, headed by the Buddha, with the thick rice gruel and fresh ghee. When the Lord had eaten and removed his hand from the bowl, the cowherd chose a low seat and sat down to one side. The Lord then instructed, roused, inspired and gladdened that cowherd with a talk on Dhamma, and then arose from his seat and departed. Now, not long after the Lord had departed, a certain man murdered that cowherd along the village boundary. Then a number of monks approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said, "Revered Sir, that cowherd who today with his own hand served and satisfied the Sangha of monks, headed by the Buddha, with thick rice gruel and fresh ghee, has been murdered, it is said by a certain man along the village boundary." Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance, "Whatever an enemy might do to an enemy, or a hater to those he hates, a wrongly directed mind can do even greater harm than that." So the person, the killer, has a wrongly directed mind. 4.4 Junha Sutta, about the moonlit night. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo wood at the squirrel's feeding place. On that occasion the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Mahamoggallana were staying in the pigeon's glen. It happened that the Venerable Sariputta on a moonlit night was seated in the open air with his head newly shaved and had attained a certain stage of concentration. At that moment, two yakas who were companions were going from north to south on some business or other, when they saw the Venerable Sariputta on the moonlit night seated in the open air with his head newly shaved. On seeing him, one yaka said to the other, "The idea has occurred to me, friend, to give this recluse a blow on the head." When he said this, the other yaka said, "Take care, friend, do not strike the recluse. He is a mighty recluse, friend, of great supernormal potency and power." A second time and third time, the first yaka said to the other, "The idea has occurred to me, friend, to give this recluse a blow on the head." A second time and third time, the other yaka said to him, "Take care, friend, do not strike the recluse. He is a mighty recluse, friend, of great supernormal potency and power." Then the first yaka, not heeding the warning of the other yaka, gave the Venerable Sariputta a blow on the head. And so great was the blow that it might have felled an elephant 7 or 7.5 cubits height, or split a great mountain peak. Thereupon that yaka, crying out, I am burning, instantly fell into the great hell. The Venerable Mahamoggallana, with divine vision, purified and surpassing that of humans, saw that yaka giving the Venerable Sariputta a blow on the head. On seeing this, he approached the Venerable Sariputta and said, "Are you well, friend? Are you bearing up? Have you any pain?" And he said, "I am well, friend Moggallana. I am bearing up, friend Moggallana, although I do have a slight headache." And Venerable Mahamoggallana said, "It is wonderful, friend Sariputta. It is marvelous, friend Sariputta. How great is the supernormal potency and power of the Venerable Sariputta. Just now, friend Sariputta, a certain yakka gave you a blow on the head, and so great was the blow it might have felled an elephant 7 or 7.5 cubits high, or split a great mountain peak. And yet the Venerable Sariputta just says, 'I am well, friend Moggallana. I am bearing up, friend Moggallana, although I do have a slight headache.'" This cubit is a 4 arms length, about a foot or more. And Venerable Sariputta said, "It is wonderful, friend Moggallana. It is marvelous, friend Moggallana. How great is the supernormal potency and power of the Venerable Mahamoggallana, in that he can actually see a yakka. Now, we could not even see a mud sprite. The Lord, with divine hearing, purified and surpassing that of humans, heard this conversation of these two great perfected ones. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "Whose mind stands like a mountain, steady, it is not perturbed, unattached to things that arouse attachment, unangered by things that provoke anger. When his mind is cultivated thus, how can suffering come to him?" So you see from this sutta, don't simply go and meditate alone in any mountain or lonely place. You might get a blow on the head. 4.5, the Bull, Elephant, Naga Sutta. This word Naga can mean this snake, a spirit, can mean big bull, elephant. Thus have I heard. At one can also mean a hero, kind of. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Kosambi at the Gosita monastery. At that time the Lord was living hemmed in by monks and nuns, by male and female lay followers, by kings and royal ministers, by sectarian teachers and their disciples. And he lived in discomfort and not at ease. Then the Lord thought, "At present I am living hemmed in by monks and nuns, etc., and I live in discomfort and not at ease. Suppose I were to live alone, secluded from the crowd." Then the Lord, having put on his robe in the forenoon and taken his bowl and outer cloak, entered Kosambi for alms food. Having walked for alms food in Kosambi and returned after the meal, he set his lodgings in order by himself, took his bowl and cloak, and without informing his attendant or taking leave of the Sangha of monks, he set off alone without a companion for Parileyaka. Walking on tour by stages, he arrived at Parileyaka and stayed near Parileyaka in a protected forest at the foot of an auspicious sal tree. Now a certain bull elephant was living hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, by elephant calves and sucklings. He ate grass with the tips pulled off, and they ate the branches he had broken down. He drank muddied water, and on going down and coming out of the water, he was jostled by she-elephants, and he lived in discomfort and not at ease. Then that bull elephant thought, "At present I am living hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, by elephant calves and sucklings. I eat grass with the tips pulled off, and they eat the branches which I break down. I drink muddied water, and on going down and coming out of the water, I am jostled by she-elephants, and I live in discomfort and not at ease. Suppose I were to live alone, secluded from the crowd." So that bull elephant left the herd and went to Parileyaka, to the protected forest, and approached the Lord at the foot of the auspicious sal tree. On reaching the place where the Lord was staying, that bull elephant kept the place free of grass and brought water with his trunk for the Lord's use. Then while the Lord was in solitude and seclusion, this thought arose in his mind: "Formerly I was living hemmed in by monks and nuns, etc., and I was living in discomfort and not at ease. But now I live not hemmed in by monks and nuns, etc., in comfort and at ease." And also this thought arose in that bull elephant's mind: Formerly I was living hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, etc. And I was living in discomfort and not at ease. But now I live not hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, etc. I eat unbroken grass, and others do not eat the branches which I break down. I drink clear water, and on going down and coming out of the water, I am not jostled by she-elephants, and I live in comfort and at ease. Then the Lord, on observing his own solitude, understood with his mind the thought in the mind of that bull elephant, and uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. This unites mind with mind, the perfected one and the bull elephant, with tusks as long as chariot poles, that each delights in being alone in the forest. This sutta has been expanded a bit in other books, I think like Dhammapada commentary, where they say even a monkey also came to serve the Buddha together with the elephant. 4.6 Pindola Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood in Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, the Venerable Pindola Bharadvaja was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, a forest dweller, an alms food collector, a rag robe wearer, a three-robe wearer, that means one set only of robes, one of few wishes, contented, secluded, solitary, energetic and ascetic, devoted to the higher mind. The Lord saw the Venerable Pindola Bharadvaja sitting cross-legged not far away, devoted to the higher mind. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance, not insulting, not injuring, restrained by the patimokkha, moderation in eating, lodging in a secluded place, being intent on the higher mind. This is the instruction of the awakened ones. This Pindola Bharadvaja is mentioned in the Vinaya books. There was an occasion when a very rich man, he was curious whether there were still arahants in the world, because they were discussing whether there were still arahants in the world. So being a rich man, he decided to see whether there's any arahants in the world. So what he did was he asked his workers to get a long bamboo pole, and he hung up the bamboo pole. But at the top of the bamboo pole, he hung a sandalwood bowl, alms bowl made completely of sandalwood, very fragrant and expensive sandalwood. So he asked everybody to pass the news around that if any monk with psychic power can fly up and take the bowl, it will belong to him. So a lot of monks passed by, none of them had psychic power to do this. But Pindola Bharadvaja, when he came, he saw that bowl and he heard what people said. He flew up, took the bowl, and then he circled the town 3 times with that bowl for everybody to see. And he came down. So he's the one with this great psychic power. But after that, the Buddha, in a way, rebuked him and forbade the monks from showing off their psychic power. 4.7 Sariputta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, the Venerable Sariputta was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, being one of few wishes, contented, secluded, solitary, energetic, devoted to the higher mind. The Lord saw the Venerable Sariputta sitting cross-legged not far away, devoted to the higher mind. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance, diligent, devoted to the higher mind, a sage trained in wisdom's ways. There are no sorrows for the stable one who is calm and ever mindful. 4.8 Sundari Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. At that time the Lord was respected, revered, honoured, venerated and given homage, and was one who obtained the requisites of robes, alms, food, lodgings and medicines. And the Sangha of monks was also respected, etc. But the wanderers of other sects were not respected, revered, honoured, venerated and given homage, and they did not obtain the requisites of robes, arms, food, lodgings, and medicines. Then those wanderers of other sects, unable to tolerate the respect shown towards the Lord and the Sangha of monks, approached Sundari, the woman wanderer, and said, "Sister, will you do something useful for your kinsmen?" And she asked, "What can I do, masters? What am I able to do? I would sacrifice even my life for the sake of my kinsmen." And they said, "Then, sister, go often to the Jeta wood." "Very well, masters," Sundari, the woman wanderer, replied. And she went often to the Jeta wood. Then, when those wanderers knew that Sundari, the woman wanderer, had been seen by many people going often to the Jeta wood, they murdered her and buried her there in a hole dug in a ditch of the Jeta wood. Then they went to King Pasenadi of Kosala and said, "Great king, Sundari, the woman wanderer, cannot be found." And he asked, "Where do you suspect she is?" And they said, "In the Jeta wood, great king." And the king said, "Then search the Jeta wood." On searching the Jeta wood, those wanderers dug up the body from the hole in the ditch where it had been buried, and putting it on a litter, had it taken to Savatthi. Going from street to street and from crossroad to crossroad, they aroused people's indignation by saying, "See, masters, the work of the followers of the Sakyan son. These recluses, the followers of the Sakyan son, are shameless, immoral, of bad conduct, liars, not livers of the holy life. They claim that they live by Dhamma, that they lead a balanced life, that they lead the holy life, that they are speakers of truth, that they are virtuous, of good conduct. But they have no status as recluses. They have no status as Brahmanas. Their recluse status is destroyed. Their Brahmana status is destroyed. Where is this recluse status? Where is this Brahmana status? They have lost their recluse status. They have lost their Brahmana status. How can a man, having taken his manly pleasures, murder a woman?" Because of this, when people saw monks in Savatthi, they reviled, abused, provoked, and annoyed them with insults and harsh words, saying, "These recluses, the followers of the Sakyan son, are shameless, immoral, of bad conduct. How can a man, having taken his manly pleasure, murder a woman?" Stop here for a moment. So these wanderers, they purposely asked this Sundari to go often to the monastery, as though she was having an affair there. And then they murdered her and claimed that she was having an affair in the monastery and was murdered, maybe because they imply she was pregnant or something. Then a number of monks, having dressed in the forenoon and taken their bowls and outer cloaks, entered Savatthi for alms food. Having walked in Savatthi for alms food and returned after the meal, they approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said, "At present, revered sir, when people see monks in Savatthi, they revile, abuse, provoke, and annoy them with insults and harsh words." And the Buddha said, "This commotion, monks, will not continue long. It will continue for only 7 days, and after 7 days it will disappear. So monks, when people revile you, abuse, provoke, and annoy you with insults and harsh words, you should respond with this verse. The false accuser goes to hell, and also one who denies the deed he did. Both these become equal hereafter, persons of base actions in the world beyond." So those monks learned this verse in the Lord's presence, and when those people, on seeing monks, reviled them, they responded with the verse. Then those people thought, "These recluses, the followers of the Sakyan son, did not do it. It was not done by them. These recluses, the followers of the Sakyan son, are asserting their innocence." And the commotion did not continue for long. The commotion continued for only 7 days, and after 7 days it disappeared. Then a number of monks approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said, "It is wonderful, revered sir. It is marvelous, revered sir. How well was this foretold by the Lord? This commotion, monks, will not continue for long. After 7 days it will disappear. Revered sir, that commotion has disappeared." Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. "Uncontrolled people pierce one with words, as they pierce a battle elephant with arrows. On hearing harsh words being uttered to him, a monk should endure them without hate. 4.9, Upasena Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo wood at the squirrel's feeding place. Then while the Venerable Upasena Vangantaputta was alone in seclusion, this thought arose in his mind. It is a gain for me, it is a great gain for me that my teacher is the Lord, Arahant Sammasambuddha, that I have gone forth from home to the homeless state in this well-taught Dhamma Vinaya, that my fellows in the holy life are virtuous and of good conduct, that I have fulfilled the moral virtues, that I am concentrated and unified of mind, that I am an Arahant who is free from the asavas, that I am of great supernormal potency and power. Fortunate has been my life, and fortunate will be my death. Stop here for a moment. So this Upasena Vangantaputta, he had attained Arahanthood. Then on reflecting, he was very grateful that he was a disciple of the Buddha and that his fellow monks are so virtuous, etc., that he has attained liberation also. And the Lord understood with his mind the thought in the mind of the Venerable Upasena Vangantaputta and uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: whose life causes no remorse and who sorrows not at death, the wise one who has seen that state sorrows not in the midst of sorrow. For a monk whose mind is calmed, who has destroyed the craving for being, the wandering on in births is finished, there is no further being for him. 4.10 Sariputta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Sariputta was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect and reviewing his own state of peace. The Lord saw the Venerable Sariputta sitting cross-legged not far away, reviewing his own state of peace. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: for a monk whose mind is calm and peaceful, who has cut the cord of craving for being, the wandering on in births is finished. He is freed from Mara's bonds. Okay, we stop here. Anything to discuss?
Studying Sutta 4.1 and India Sutta. And the Sutta is that after 5 things have been cultivated, 4 additional things should be done, which is found as loving kindness, anapanasati, and the perception in impermanence. And nowadays, many meditation masters teachers only select one object to be right. Would this limit our progress in the spiritual life?
Actually, in the spiritual life, depending on how serious you are, if you become a monk, then the basic things like the Vinaya you have to learn very well, the suttas you have to learn, the duties in the monastery, the way to conduct. For example, the pavarana, entering the range, and katina and all these things. So this one is a complete training. This foulness is the asubha, unattractiveness of the body, what in Chinese we call puching guan. And then metta, this one like metta is not that every monk has to cultivate it. If you have a problem with anger, then you need to cultivate metta. If you don't have a problem with anger, it might not be necessary to cultivate metta. And then this anapanasati. This anapanasati and this unattractiveness of the body are 2 different meditations. So if you don't want to cultivate both, you practice one or so, it's okay. But the foulness is, even though you practice anapanasati, you still have to realize that the body is not all that attractive. Normally we only see the body skin deep only lah. We don't think of the inner parts of the body, no? But we have to know also lah, the body is not that beautiful lah when you contemplate all the things inside the body lah. And this impermanence, that is very important. Everybody has to, if you want to attain liberation, you got to see impermanence. Only when you see impermanence, then you see dukkha and anatta, no self.
Thank you. Let me express several times, and for me times, and let the roles of being a man first, and that can bring out that Nidya, Sita, rather than bring out and practice on their own at the start. So the problem is that these days, many of us, men who start off with practicing the Dharma center, and become serious practitioner, and they tend to practice alone. For example, when you go to different Dharma centers and practice, they learn not only at home, rather than staying put to one monastery and learn the whole world under a monk. So the mindset seems to be very much own practice rather than attracting to a community, a big community, and there's no sense of belonging to it, no sense of belonging to a monastery. It is like something here and there. To get in and do it, it's not healthy, it's just money.
Yes. This shows the immaturity of Buddhism in our country. In a Buddhist country like Thailand or Myanmar and Sri Lanka, they have a long tradition. So when a monk goes forth, he belongs to a certain tradition, and they are very proud of that tradition. And they stay within that tradition, they don't wander out of that tradition. And also they have great respect for the teacher. You can see, like in the forest monasteries of Thailand, when the monks come back from alms round, like Ajahn Chah monasteries, they wash the feet of the teacher. And if the teacher is old, they even bathe for the teacher, massage the teacher, as our Ajahn Hui Kwang has described in his talk. He has to massage his teacher until very late in the night, 2 a.m. or something. So all this is discipline, but because Buddhism is not mature enough in our country, so you find a lot of monks, they want to go their own way. They don't want to be disciplined by a teacher. When the teacher gets a bit too strict, then they run away. So they want to be independent. So when they form this habit, then they do the karma, they get the vipaka. When they are senior themselves, they find also nobody wants to follow them. But this, unfortunately, that's because our country is new, so this is something we have to go through.
On one hand, we talk about the science senior good known about the common human. On the other hand, talk about companionship among minds. Like the Buddhas, when we have people like the they all go forth in like obviously what some of them can see that so somehow the camaraderie is there, and somehow they can help each other. So in our
Yes, yes. Because most of our monasteries, we have very few monks. When you have many monks, then it's different. And you have a long tradition. So, I have stayed in Mahayana monasteries as a new monk, and I have stayed in monasteries in Thailand. I find, like in the forest monasteries of Thailand, they are more supportive. They take care of each other. Because they are trained by the teacher to take care of the teacher, so they also take care of each other. Whereas you find in Mahayana monasteries, they don't have this tradition. So even like in Malaysia, we have some old Mahayana monks. They have many disciples, but the disciples never live with them for long. So when they are old, their own disciples don't look after them. You can't do anything. This is just takes time, and no two monasteries are the same. So you just have to let things go the natural way.
But as we move as young monks, how can we get the inspiration that the old Islam and simple
this one, all this depends on the individual. You cannot expect a monk to be like this and to be like that. That's why if you look at the history of Buddhism, you find a lot of monks, they don't want to take disciples. Taking disciples is actually a burden. So even that day I mentioned about Mechi, the same applies with monks. If from my experience, that some people say they want to become a monk here, I find they are not qualified to be a monk, so rather not take them. Just 1 or 2 days ago, I got a call from somebody in Penang side now, so he said he had been listening to my Dhamma talk and he wants to come here to become a monk. But I know a bit about his background and I know he's not a suitable candidate. So this, you can't force the thing. And the other thing I noticed, that if people wear the robes after 40, it's very hard to train them. That's why, like in this Wat Dhammakaya in Bangkok, near Bangkok, they don't accept people for monkhood after 40, because their habits are set. Not willing to bend. Younger people are willing to bend themselves.
Very often the Buddha would transcend silence to open the mouth and food. One that is considered disrespectful to say yes?
No. It must be the tradition. And also, if he says yes, then if he cannot make it, then he's telling a lie. Just like 1 or 2 days ago, we read the sutta about this, what's her name, Supavasa, the one who was pregnant for so long, and then invited the Buddha for a meal. Then the Buddha asked Moggallana to cancel another appointment, you see. So if he had said yes, then to cancel it again, it would be very, it's like telling a lie. So if he doesn't object, it means he agrees to it. If he can't make it, then he'll say he can't make it. But of course, nowadays, we don't do this. It's probably an Indian tradition. Yeah, that's the Buddha's way of not accepting. They know. a very long question. It take another Dhamma talk too. This liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom is explained in my book. I think Samatha and Vipassana. So you read that book. It shows you have not been reading my book. It's been there for so many years already. And then this cessation and cessation of being. This cessation can be cessation of greed, hatred and delusion. It can also be, which means a cessation of being. Or it can be cessation of perception and feeling. The cessation of perception and feeling is cessation of the sixth consciousness. When the sixth consciousness stops, it's also called nirodha, cessation, and cessation of perception and feeling. And in that state, where the sixth consciousness stops, there was some description of it. We read, I think yesterday, where there is no sun, no moon, and yet it's not dark. And there's no large and small, no objects. I mentioned in that state, for the normal sixth consciousness, you must have an object. The object is either sights or sounds or smells or tastes and thoughts. But in that cessation state, cessation of perception and feeling, which is cessation of consciousness, of the sixth consciousness, you have a different type of consciousness. It is bright and it is boundless and there is no object. When a person comes out of that state, he becomes an arahant. He knows that the whole world is only mind-made like a dream. The self is also in the dream.
More about mind's life. Many people think that mind is especially people. Many think that mind is able to respond easily. This is because most of our minds think alone. So in this stage, you see the mind to live their own duties, and some parts you have mind in charge. I think you have more than 500 people living in the community. You can saw that you read earlier that the Venerable Udana, I think he has honey and water all he sent to his relatives, and maybe to the store and all. And here they have so many minds living together, so many thoughts and dance, which is contrary to what they think is in the dream.
Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of people, they are used to a life of luxury, and then they come and wear the robe. Also, they think, they expect their life of luxury. But actually, during the Buddha's time, if you wear the robes, it's a very tough life. Okay, shall we end here?